Welcome back, everybody, to Urban Decay, episode 16.5?
Question mark?
Wait a minute. What does that mean, Brandon? What does 0.5 mean?
Well,
I'm also losing my voice a little bit.
Are you?
Yeah.
Isn't that like
when
Ryan?
I get
That's
in the
Ryan's
higher
job.
ranges, I
Like
know.
the new Ryan.
Well, when Ryan loses his voice, he gets sexier. When I lose
true.
my voice, I just sound more squeaky.
Homeless.
Homeless, yeah.
Disparaged.
Okay.
What does episode 16.5 mean? I think it means that we don't have an episode 17. And I guess if you've been following Urban Decay Podcast for any amount of time, you probably know that. You're aware that we haven't had episode 17 yet and that it's been a few weeks. And we kind of figured, I guess, that we owed an explanation for the temporary break.
That's exactly right. Are we going to get that explanation in this episode?
No, we're not.
Wait, what?
Just kidding. We totally are. That's the function and purpose of releasing this episode, I think, is to talk about why there's been a break, when the break is going to end, and sort of spend some time maybe just talking about some game theory things.
Yeah, totally.
That seems applicable.
And even before we get into that, let's just give a huge thank you to the community that has been super nice to us over the past, 7
It's been a few months, yeah.
Has it? No, not quite that.
It's not maybe 7, but
May,
6,
right?
Yeah, June,
We
July,
started in May.
Yeah, like 5,
So
6 months.
6 months that we've been doing this. So,
And I think we do a pretty good job of giving individual shout outs from time to time at the beginning of episodes, but given the amount of response that we've had and the number of online interactions and things, we really can't acknowledge every single thing that's happened, and this is maybe just our blanket acknowledgement of we felt really warmly welcomed into an online community of people that are interested in this game, and even for those people that don't obviously necessarily contact us through social media or anything, there's been a lot of just we know people are listening to the podcast, first of all, which is good, and that is good. That is really the whole purpose, right? The fact that something that we have created and take some pride in is making its way into the world is kind of neato. You know?
Totally. And I need to reiterate that this was originally just for me. I recorded this so that I could re-listen to our stuff.
This is true.
And before we began, I was just like, okay, well, we'll just do it as a show in case we want to upload it, but we probably won't. And then, and so any amount of feedback that we're getting from anyone out there that's listening is way more than we ever thought we'd get. And so that's why we're kind of overly excited for it's pretty a small amount of feedback that we're getting, but the feedback is
I wouldn't say that. I think we're getting quite a lot. We've had people reach out to us that want to take part in the game or know more about the setting. People have plotted.
What I'm trying to say is we're not having
where we're going.
Masses of people come to our house to try and we
don't need to hire security.
Yeah,
that's that, and thank goodness for that, right?
Yeah.
But
that's what I'm saying is and even if one person is enjoying it, it's great. So that's what I mean. Yeah. And we have had quite a few people reach out to us, which is amazing.
And people what's surprising to me, and I think consistently surprising to both of us, is that people are pretty consistently engaged in ways that take us by surprise. Because I think the first couple people that contacted us were people that we knew in Calgary, and they were like, oh, that's cool that you're doing this thing here, and they seem kind of interested in it. Even people that weren't otherwise interested in gamer culture things.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of kept going, and so for the first while it was just Calgary people. I mean, for the first little while it was people that we knew, and then it was people isolated to sort of the city that we live in, and then from there it's kind of snowballed into this thing where we're getting emails from New York and Wisconsin and Ohio and people that we've never met and never heard of, and then it eventually got to a point where we're getting emails and Facebook shout outs from people who we've heard of that are in the industry. And that's been really exciting because, I think
because it was the most unexpected.
Yeah, it's totally unexpected.
Right?
It's you feel like you're just a nerd playing a game in a basement, and for the people who created the game to be aware that you exist is maybe just kind of an exciting little factor, right?
Oh yeah, totally. So, and it has been quite a journey too.
It's a full circle.
Moment. Yeah, exactly. Especially for you, I would say, growing up having played Palladium.
That's true.
That's been more of an exciting thing.
Well, because I've had my whole life to build an element of celebrity around some of the people that like because we've sort of had some interactions online with Palladium Books, and we've had some interactions with like some of the creators of the game, or one of the creators of the game, and that's been like, for me, it's like, oh, but I know who that is, and you know, that's been cool. That's been super rad.
Yeah,
I have fanboyed out on multiple occasions, just a little bit. So
is that why we stopped recording?
That is not why we stopped
because
recording.
we just were so shocked.
No,
and we didn't know where to go from
the
here?
reason that we haven't had an episode in a few weeks is, and we, I don't know how to preface this. Well, I'm just going to jump in. So Shane had to leave for a study abroad for school. So he's in school at the moment, and he's somewhere else.
Yeah, Shane is the player who plays the character Shane.
His character Shane.
Yeah, in case you didn't know who Shane was.
So he's gone for the moment, and we sort of we knew that the temporary absence was coming, and we had developed a plan that we thought was going to get us through his absence. And the plan was meet a little bit more regularly in the weeks preceding him leaving, record a higher number of episodes, and then release them slowly during his absence. John, why didn't that work out?
Yeah, well, there's a number of reasons why that didn't work out. And in a way, I'm actually glad it didn't, because if we had kind of been pumping them out, you know, faster than what maybe you were ready for as a game master, or we were ready for as players, or more we could take as players, it might have dropped in quality as well. So in a way, it's kind of good that we can take some time to, I don't know, just like recollect and stuff. But like it sucks that we've fallen out. Like we haven't fallen out, but like we've had to take this break.
Yeah. But it's
better than rushing through it all to try and get stuff up for you guys.
So the reason that plan didn't work out was primarily, I'm going to take credit for this. This was primarily my fault. I was currently finishing a degree as well. I was just finishing up a master's degree, and thesis time snuck up on me really fast, and I got really engaged with what I was doing in school and could not allocate the amount of time necessary to create compelling plot points for our players and like keep the game going in a way that we thought the players would enjoy and that listeners would enjoy. Because
that's
ultimately, if I mean, we could have still met once a week, we still could have done it, and I still could have like group storytelling. Is a lot of it is, you know, for anyone that role plays, you know how much of it is improvisational, but there's also a great deal to be said for the amount of preparation that goes into writing a campaign and trying to plan for the contingencies in any storyline that your players might end up investigating. So I try to balance, like when I'm GMing, I like to strike a balance between the improvisational and the planning, because if you do any, like either one style too much, then it sort of restricts the game too much, in my opinion. So, and that wasn't possible with my schedule. So that's my bad. It's totally my fault. I'm going to take credit for that. You can send hate mail to TopDad
at TopDad. Yeah, TopDad's #1 fan on Twitter. Yeah, and Brandon will be sure to get that.
I'm sure Ryan.
But Brandon, I thought that the players were the ones who ran the game, and the GM was just a referee.
I mean, that's at least mostly true. But we couldn't run the game without Shane. We can't run the game without Brandon. Ultimately, I don't think we can run the game without the entire group of us.
Exactly.
So,
yeah,
that's a fact.
And like, I would accept thesis as one of the excuses I would accept. I guess
we can blame Shane for leaving.
Death is another one. Like death, writing a thesis.
Oh, you mean like if...
Those are the excuses I would take for not being able to.
I was like, Shane's not dead.
Oh no. No, I'm saying these are excuses for you not allowing us to fill in the episodes.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
But those are the only two. So luckily you're okay. You fit it right in there. So. Yeah. So hiatus is the word we're throwing around.
Hiatus. Yeah, we're just on temporary hiatus. The season 1 of the podcast isn't even over yet, which is unfortunate that we couldn't arrive at a bit of a conclusion-y moment for people. But the good news is that with all this extra time, that I think we've all had a lot of time to reflect on what's happened so far, and it's given me a lot of planning time to think about what happens going ahead. In the world, at least. I can't plan what the players do, but I can plan some of the events that happen in the world that they're living in. So I think that there's going to be some good things. I think I'm really excited for the conclusion of the season. And honestly, I'm really just excited to see some of the weird things that You guys always surprise me with the choices that you make while we're playing. I'm not always flabbergasted. I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, like that was definitely a possible outcome.
Right.
But from time to time, you'll do things that just like totally blow me away, and I'm like, why did they decide to do that?
And to be fair, they've kind of blown me away too. Even though I'm making them, like when I listen back, I'm like, why would I choose that?
Yeah.
Why did I do that?
Right.
Or why did I say that? Or why would I?
But
even
it's like
think
in
about
the
doing
heat
that?
of the moment, you got to make a choice. And
Why would I throw
you know?
the smoke alarm out the window? That's a stupid idea. I could have just smashed it. You know?
It's great. It's so great.
But it's and that's what makes the game so fun because it's so spontaneous and so
Exactly.
improvisational and like we don't know what to do and we don't know what's happening. And part of that is I feel it more in this game than other role playing games that we've played. And like I've got my foot in about like 6 campaigns right now. It's ridiculous. Or maybe 4 or 5 actually. And nothing really gets that feeling of like stress as like Dead Rain, you know? Or like, and I think part of it is the way that we're playing it, how we're like playing as ourselves. That definitely opens it up more, and it just allows a more seamless like immersion, right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
Whereas other games, like, you know, I'm playing as a wizard necromancer. I can't really relate to a wizard necromancer that well. Like, you know, and I still do well as, you know, getting into character. But it's just a totally different level playing as yourself. You know,
Yeah.
and in your own city, which
Absolutely.
is even crazier. So.
And I think that that just relates back to a lot of ideas that are sort of well known within gamer culture and game theory. I keep saying that term game theory. I'm not sure that's the right. I'm not sure that's a term that exists. That's just one that I tend to use.
Didn't you write your thesis on something like that?
My thesis was related to game culture.
Why don't you just quickly talk? I'm just kidding.
Let's not. Rather than unpack my thesis, though, I think talking about some of the things that are successful about our approach to creating this game, I think people will be interested to hear about a little bit because who wrote Of Dice and Men? Is that? Could you have your phone on you?
I do. Let me.
Will you
just
Google that?
look
Of
it
Dice
up.
and Men. I think it's David M. Ewald, but I can't. That might be Dangerous Games. Anyways, while John's Googling that, basically the theory that I'm trying to unpack and the theory that is contained within a lot of literature, but Of Dice and Men is one that I've...
David Ewald.
David Ewald?
M. Ewald.
Yeah. Cool author. Cool book, Of Dice and Men. He's not paying me to advertise for him or
Not a
anything.
sponsor.
But I read it as part of preparation for my thesis, and it was one that resonated with me just because it was a more casual voice rather than like a really heavily academic tone. And he talks a little bit about the importance of immersion in gameplay and what it is that makes tabletop role-playing so successful as a genre has a lot to do with the player's ability to sort of insert themselves in other characters and in other worlds. And that the amount of excitement that players tend to experience over a game, or the amount of stress or the amount of any heightened emotion, is directly relative to the amount that they feel invested in their character and in that game and in the setting.
Yeah.
And so given that, like, and we've talked about this before, that given that our setting takes place in a version of the real world, you know, we're extracting, you know, we live in Calgary, we're playing in a fictionalized version of Calgary. We're playing with Ryan, Shane, and John as characters, but that's what they're...
Ryan, Jane, and Sean in real life.
Jane and Sean?
Right, wait,
Ryan, Shane and John.
Ryan, John, and Shane. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But that, you know, and they're playing fictionalized versions of themselves, and so the stakes feel higher because you're playing a character that you automatically identify with, and I think that's kind of what I want to get at in expounding on this theory, is that I don't think that anyone has to play as themselves to experience that degree of immersion in a game. Right.
It's
that,
not
like,
a requisite.
Obviously, if that were the prerequisite, I think people would have figured that out ages ago at the beginning of D&D, and it would have involved time travel or portal jumping or something.
Or it would just be
and then that
Work
would be the
Simulator
game.
2017, and you just roleplay your real life.
Exactly. And then you just put the game books down and you go to work every day. And like, that's not, you know, but the quality of immersion is definitely something that I find is like of paramount importance in gaming. And to a certain extent, I think that puts a lot of weight and pressure on the game master, the dungeon master, but also puts a lot of weight and importance on the players themselves to sort of generate characters that they feel compelled to understand or investigate or, you know, because I think as a general rule, when you create a character, and you tell me if this is true for you, John, when you create a character, or when I create a character, I'll just say what I do. When I create a character, I'll usually come up with like an idea, and that idea is usually based around like a quirk. You know, they're like, oh, I'm gonna build a goblin, but he's like a paladin or a white mage, like something that a goblin wouldn't be. Or I'm gonna build a troll that speaks with a British accent and is like really overly polite but still super violent. You know, some kind of like quirky theme.
Yeah, yeah.
But then like what it means to be that character and who that character is, I think unfolds to you as you play.
Oh, you know? I agree with that.
Because you have to, just because you've developed like a character idea or a character concept doesn't mean that you know automatically how they're going to interact in every kind of circumstance. And so as you go through a game where they're put in positions where they have to interact with other player characters and villains of different alignments and all kinds of different situations, you know, there's so much that isn't dictated by the character creation process. Alignment doesn't cover whether they're brave or a coward. Yeah, alignment doesn't cover whether they're whether they have any like strange fixations or any like weird psychoses,
or optimistic, you know what I mean? Or depressed.
Yeah,
or, yeah.
And like those are things that you uncover about your character as you play.
Right.
But the extent to which that becomes true has a lot to do with the amount of emotional and intellectual energy that you're willing to invest in your character. I've definitely played characters. I mean, we've all played in games and in campaigns where we play with people or where we're maybe feeling a little bit more emotionally lazy, and it's just sort of turns into a hack and slash. You know? And it's not so much about character development as it is about like game mechanics. Yeah. Beat the bad guy, get the loot,
get XP,
which is fine. It's a totally fine way to play. It's definitely not the approach that we're taking in this game, right?
Oh, definitely not. Like the amount of encounters we've had in this game are, you can count them on one hand, basically. Yeah.
And even those encounters, a lot of them aren't even heavily combat based so much as escape.
Oh yeah,
based,
yeah.
Right? It's like get out of there.
That's the whole point of this game is the survival. It's not a hero game really like D&D is. It's more of like scavenge, fight for life, and get out of there, right?
Yeah.
So do you see some of our characters changing?
Oh, absolutely. I saw it immediately.
Right?
And like, as a game master, that's always the chuckle moment for me, is that I get to sit back behind the screen and sort of just like laugh at what's happening.
Yeah.
Because...
And that's so extra weird because it's ourselves.
Yeah, because it's yourself.
But we're becoming a fictionalized version of ourselves.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's a really weird feeling to be playing as yourself and then...
And I think psychologically, this game makes a lot of room for that.
Oh, yeah,
because, you know, on any average day... You know, John and Shane and Ryan aren't likely to go and like steal from a Safeway
or run over people.
You know, and actually, maybe the Safeway episode is like the best example because that was the moment that you all made like a really clear decision about a new thing that was acceptable.
Yeah.
Right, and then that has dictated a lot of the rest of the game.
That's true. That's true.
But like you went to Safeway to like get some goods and like stock up on a couple things so that if power was out for a couple days, you'd be okay. And then you got there and collected what you needed, and then like very righteously tried to go through the self-checkout to pay for the items,
to Shane.
even though there was nobody present, right? Which I think says a lot already. That like, it says a lot about Shane, anyways. That like he was like, no, you guys, and then as soon as other people came in and started looting, then there's this light bulb moment that like suddenly you realized, like, no, we need to get out of here, and it needs to, and we need to get out of here now. And like, and if we can't pay for if there's no one here to take our money, like that's too bad. We would pay if we could. It's time to go.
Well, that's what's so cool is because it brings up a slew of moral questions. Because it's like, if there's no one holding you back, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
If there's no like officer there watching, is there a law? You know?
And more than that, if this store is never open again, then its goods are public domain.
Like, if you look at it legally, though, someone owns that building and owns those goods. Someone's paid for those goods to ship them there.
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely 100%.
So that's why it's so cool, because it's like...
But then you
start rationalizing
the evolution of all of society.
Yeah.
And, like, that happens slowly, because at first it's like, oh, people are sick. And then all of a sudden, the city's on fire. Everyone's dying. Martial law or something's happening. Military are out, like, cleaning the streets and, like, killing people.
Yeah.
And then, like... And it's like, at a certain point... Like, where do you draw the line?
Mm-hmm.
At what point can you morally justify taking the things that you need to survive?
Yeah.
And I think
And that's the
as a
encounter
group, you guys drew a line
yeah.
earlier than I expected. I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because we were only.
Well,
we were
it was like a
day in.
half. It was like a half measure. We like
Yeah.
scanned some stuff, but then when we saw other people looting, we kind of like jumped on board.
And you went in panic mode. You know what I mean? And I think that like so I'm not overly evaluating like any one person in the group. I'm just saying that like like have you evolved in ways that I didn't expect? Yes. And you've also evolved in certain ways more quickly than I did expect, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, and that's been exciting for me as a GM that like I think when I was a kid I think I talked about this in our other 0.5 episode where I talked about when I was a kid I didn't really like to play the role of the lead storyteller, the GM or DM.
I think episode 0, but yeah.
And as I get more acquainted with that side of things, it's so exciting. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you have this whole window on the world, you know, and you sort of have an idea of certain things that are going to happen for sure, and then what I do some things. This is maybe changing subjects a little bit. I do a couple things to keep myself interested, and a lot of that has to do with introducing sort of paradoxes for not paradoxes. What's the sort of conflicting choices for the characters to choose between, and watching which choice they make, and then trying to analyze why they chose what they chose. So it's almost like this. I mean, to a certain extent,
science experiment.
Yeah, it gets kind of clinical to a certain extent, and maybe less so in this campaign than another campaign that I'm running. John and I are also doing a D&D 5th campaign that's been really fun.
It's called World of Wraithmire,
and it's been like I do my best to introduce. I'm already revealing too much because John doesn't know this, but I've introduced certain elements into the game that eventually they're all gonna, as a group, the party is gonna have to pick between. And there's not necessarily a right answer, and there's not necessarily a good answer, but they're going to have to pick one of the outcomes. And then and so that's what's fun, is sort of setting these scenarios up and then watching what they choose.
I will be your guinea pig. I'll be your guinea pig all night long.
Well, at this point you have no choice. You're already in both games. So.
That's true.
Yeah. And I mean, it's happened in this game as well, right? Because I had an idea of what might happen with Evie.
Okay.
Not everything that I thought was going to happen with Evie has happened with Evie.
Yeah. Right.
And a number of things that I just did not anticipate at all have happened with Evie and Top Dad and Top Dad's wife. And like there's a lot of things that like it's just watching your interaction with the world, watching your interaction with different elements of society, watching your interaction with other beings that exist in that world. That there's always a feeling for me that there's really high stakes for not just for you as characters, but for these NPCs. Top Dad died, I would be sad. Yeah. If Evie died, I would probably cry in real life.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But does that mean
it's super cool because it's kind of like you're casting bait out into the ocean, and then we're all just this one fish, and whichever one we grab, that's kind of the like alternate reality line that we're gonna pick, right?
Exactly.
Because if we had picked bait C or D, then everything could have been so different. Yeah.
Completely.
Like.
I think, and like, what if you what if you had, in your panic had like turned your backs on Evie with the idea that like we only have so many supplies, we can barely fend for ourselves. Yeah. You know, unfortunately, she's on her own. You know.
Well, it could have gone a number of ways, and
it could have. And actually, if you hadn't found her within, there was a timeline for that. If you hadn't found her within a certain number of days, like if you had kept failing those perception rolls,
well, she's
done. She doesn't live forever. She can't live, she can't live forever by herself.
Oh
she was going to die if you hadn't found her. So there was already real stakes for me for characters that you didn't necessarily know existed yet. Right? Like you'd seen Evie in the car crash, but you didn't know it was her.
That is a really cool outlook to think of. Being a game master in that way, right? Yeah. I just want to point out as well, like another level of immersion that we get is from playing through the apocalypse, right? So that helped in our for ourselves as players to get into our characters because it was all normal, right? Like I was heading home from work,
on the day that we started playing.
Yeah, literally just was there. And then we got in like a car accident, and it's like, sure, it was traumatizing, but it's something I know and I feel and I've seen and I've been in, like I get that. And then from it to just go slow, it's so slow. Like Dead Rain, we were playing it so slow. Yeah. We haven't done any time fast forwarding really, hardly, except for sleeping moments.
And actually that's a really great time to bring up. In episode 0, we talked about the idea of introducing a game mechanic into the game where we wanted. I'm trying to remember how we phrased it. Where we wanted to play sort of in real time, so that each day that we met was that day in the game.
Yeah, and we actually even said that.
And that's what we said we were going to do.
And then we just didn't do it.
It ended up being a total lie because it was.
Nobody wanted to do that.
Let go of the control of those important moments. And I don't know.
Because who's to say what I would have done?
Yeah, exactly, right?
You know?
I don't want to assume what you guys were doing for an entire week at a time, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And like maybe we'll get to a point in the game where certain parts of the world are at an amount of stasis that allow us to do that.
Yeah.
But at the moment, so much is changing so rapidly,
like minute to minute,
every day, that it's just, I think we all had a degree of an anxiety over our characters and over the situation that we couldn't let go of those moments. And so we've temporarily abandoned that idea. And if you listen to episode 0 and then listen to the rest of the podcast, you'd be confused. Realize that part of the way through.
Yeah.
No, I'm not necessarily sure it's confusing. It's just sort of.
Well, we just said one thing and then didn't do it. Basically.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Or maybe they're just waiting for that moment. But and like it'll come up, I'm sure eventually. We can't just go, minute to minute. I mean,
and that's kind of the funny thing too, is that even we talk about the game setting being Calgary. Calgary exists in the setting that the game creators wrote for this game. Calgary exists. North America exists.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere in the world exists. But we're still not playing the version of the game yet that has been written by the creators of the game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that's what you're talking about, is like playing through the apocalypse.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Playing through this scenario that bridges the gap between the way the world is now and the world written by the game creators.
Dead Rain, yeah.
Yeah, because that's... And I think the world written by the Dead Rain creators is a really compelling world and has a lot of really interesting facets to it that are worth exploring. But, in interest of keeping the immersive quality of what we're trying to do, which I think is a little bit separate from the way that most games operate, it sort of made more sense, If we had just made characters for the game and called them John and Shane and Ryan, and you're a Hound Master or a Drone Master or a
soldier,
whatever. Yeah, any of the OCCs that are embedded in the main book, that would have been fine, and it could have been just as immersive. But since we decided to do this other thing, it was impossible to do it the way that we had conceived of it without playing through the
exactly.
Scenario,
Yeah, and I really like it. Like, I'm not gonna lie. That's one of my favorite parts about this, is because it's slow, time wise, but so exciting. Like, every session we've played has been very engaging, very exciting, and and I think that speaks volumes to you as a game master as well, because it's like people would probably struggle with how do you make a game so engaging when it's just like go to the store, you know what I mean? And
we do have 3 shopping episodes.
We do, and I think. And even the one where we were just looting the place and there was no real danger, but we all felt it.
But it was but what do we need? And we might not get another chance to come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the level of stress did not go down when we were in there shopping. Like, it was all, everything is high volume.
Run to the bakery, run to the deli, get all the stuff. And
canned foods,
and you're right. I think that's weird. And I don't want to take full credit for that as a game master. I think a lot of that is to the credit of the game designers, that they're capitalizing on zombie fictions that already exist in pop culture to create a game environment that has high stakes, that has that embedded degree of stress for all the decisions that you make. Because the whole idea behind that level of stress is, I don't know where the danger is, I don't know where it's coming from, I just know that it exists. And so that means it could be coming from anywhere, and it could be coming at any time. Yeah. And so that I don't think is necessarily... I mean, I'm not saying I don't contribute to helping pervade that within our story, but I would say that's a huge credit to the game designers themselves and to the world that we're playing in. And I think it's cool that we kind of picked up this game, and it should have more attention than it has right now. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think Dead Rain is a great game that has that keeps you very engaged always, and you're always kind of just freaking out.
Yeah.
Which is what you want in a zombie apocalypse, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You don't want those moments of respite and
yeah.
You know.
I mean, I do.
Yeah, intellectually,
I do.
Yeah, you need the break.
But at the same time, I don't, you know, it's, you don't want to just be, weeding your garden and, and stuff like that. And so And that's what's cool about this. Like, even though it's a contemporary game set in nowadays, like, it's not boring. And I think that some games get like that, or they could run into that problem, you know?
Definitely. I had one more thought about playing through the Apocalypse as well.
Yeah.
Within the Palladium, I keep saying Palladium. For those of you that actually play the game or that work for the company, oh my gosh, I know that it's Palladium. I will not say it that way. I'm sorry. It's my life.
That's just how I've always thought it. That's how I read it.
I know, that's how I read it when I was a kid.
And that's what stuck in my head.
Now I have no ability to say it.
Yeah, just blame it on our Canadian-ness.
Canadian accents, yeah. So, within the Palladium Books game system, which is their entire Megaverse, so like Heroes Unlimited, Palladium Fantasy, Dead Rain, Rifts, any of this stuff, there is the embedded idea. Yeah, Robotech. There's this embedded TMNT. Sorry, I'll say what I'm going to say now.
Okay.
There's this embedded idea that that deals with trauma in a way that I think is really interesting, that a lot of game systems don't touch on at all, which is when you go through traumatic events, there is a possibility that it will result in an alignment change. The idea being that not everything that you go through in terms of life and death is just going to dump you out on the other side of adversity feeling hunky-dory again. Yeah. That it's not a sitcom. We don't always go back to the stasis that existed before the traumatic events. Sometimes the things that happen that are life-threatening have consequences mentally and emotionally, and they have consequences for our characters, and it's part of why our characters develop the way that they do. And so within the game system, they have embedded rules on how to deal with trauma. And so one of those possible rules is to, I hope I'm not like oversimplifying or adding too much complexity to this, but the idea is that there's a table that you can roll on if you go through a traumatic or otherwise terrifying event, to see if you develop a psychosis, to see if it forces an alignment change, to see if any kind of weird things happen to your character that you're not in control of.
That's good.
And I like that because it's reflective of reality. It's reflective of, you know, in real life, sometimes life throws hardballs at us, and you might, you know, get one that you're not able to hit, right?
Yeah, no one chooses to get,
nobody chooses to go crazy.
Psychosis, or like, nobody chooses to, you know, have PTSD and
exactly.
You know, so.
Yeah, and so I think especially in a setting like this, where we're watching society devolve around our characters, where we're watching like the entire world literally just crumble. Yeah. Everything that everybody knows, all the perceptions of reality that we have preconceived prior to this zombie apocalypse, we've got to throw all our assumptions aside. And we have to re-question all our moral behaviors and where those morals are derived from. We have to re-question, you know, what's acceptable and what's not in terms of taking what you need to survive, in terms of combating other people that are also just trying to survive. And that doesn't come without consequences. I don't think it should come without consequences. Right. Yeah. And playing through the apocalypse saves, like to a certain extent, it saved us from having to just randomly roll on these sorts of tables. Yeah. Right? Because you can do it at character creation, you can do it after a traumatic event, or we can do what we're doing. John's character has changed as a result of playing through the game. Shane's character has changed. And I think that how John, Shane, and Ryan play their characters now versus how they played them the first day is very different. Yeah. And for sure. And I think to a certain extent it reflects more of a personality shift than an alignment shift per se. Yeah, right. Definitely. We're not talking about developing like full on PTSD or anything yet. Yeah. But definitely there's been that element just sort of embedded into how we're approaching the gameplay, and I think that is really rewarding. It's just really cool because it's so organic. Yeah. And that's what feels good about it, is that it feels very natural. The flow doesn't feel forced, because I think increasingly people are associate with the idea that game mechanics in role-playing should be as invisible as possible. And D&D 5th edition is a great example of that. They've really simplified a lot of things, especially if you compare it to 4th. A lot of people don't. They'll skip right from 3rd, or 3rd, 5. Yeah, it's from 5 to 5th, yeah. But yeah, not oversimplifying, but simplifying the mechanics as much as possible so that they become invisible and don't overtake the storytelling is what's good. And it just wraps us back to the immersion that we were talking about earlier. Yeah. You know, there's a million ways to achieve that, a million ways to explore that. And like I said, I don't think you have to play in the city that you live in or play the character that you exist as in real life.
Yeah.
In order for that immersion to be possible. But in whatever game system you're playing, if you look for ways as a game master to invest in your world and to create compelling events happening in your world, then it creates an environment that the characters are more, or the player characters are more likely to invest more fully in their characters. Now, it's still sort of on them the degree to which they invest, but that's sort of what my piece is about that. I have a lot of ideas about all those things, but I think that's sort of the brunt of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, but hey, if you want to take this literally and actually try playing yourself in your current campaign or in a new campaign, go for it.
Oh my gosh, do it.
Try it out. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways you can get Joe Smith into a fantasy setting or a futuristic setting or anything. So use your brains, figure it out. It's super fun. I would highly recommend trying to play as yourself. Or bring a fantasy setting to your city. That's also a really cool idea as well. Yeah. I think we've pretty much talked about what we want to talk about in this 0.5 episode. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say?
We're sorry about the hiatus.
Yes.
It is
Mucho
going
sorry.
to end. We're hoping to have new episodes going up late December, early January.
Yeah.
Is that the plan?
I really want to say late December, but
I mean,
expect them January.
I'd like to say earlier than that, but if we say late December, early January, then
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's probably going to be more early January. It's probably going to be more early January than it is, December. But we'll,
we're on it.
We are so on it, and that's actually not too long away.
The story isn't over, and I think if you bear with us, then hopefully it'll be worth your while.
Yes. I think so.
This has been, I'm just going to say this. This has been the most rewarding RPG experience of my life.
Yeah.
I have played a lot of different campaigns, a lot of different systems with a lot of different people, and I've played some really great games, but this one takes the cake.
Yeah.
At 100%, absolutely. And I'm not even playing, right, as a character. But man, it's just been so fun to watch. It's been so fun to analyze your every silly move. It's been some of the crazy, outrageously impossible rolls that you guys have made in the nick of time to survive.
Oh yeah.
Like all of this has just been
stuff.
like really great, and I hope that it continues along those lines. I think it's gonna be great.
I think as long as we don't change too much, we will. So thanks everyone for listening to this 0.5 episode. We'll if you aren't even listening to this today, like in real time, and you're just picking it up later, and you hear this whole thing of like,
and there's
like
17.
60 episodes after this, and you're like, what are these guys talking about? Then just disregard this, man. It's fine.
Just move right on down
just
the road.
move along.
Take what we said about immersion, apply it to your own games, and then just keep on.
Yeah, you can even stop right now if you wanted to. Just turn it off, or just hit that next skip button, and you're good to go. But yeah, thanks everybody for being patient with us and for being awesome. The community is so great, and we love you all, and we're gonna keep doing what we do. So until next time, you guys take care of yourselves out there. Bye bye.